Remembrance Sunday inevitably turns our focus to war. And in recent years, war has felt remote, either because it was a long time ago, 1914, 1939, or because it was a long distance away, Iraq, Afghanistan. But in 2022, we have war in Europe. We do not know what Russia will do next. We do not know what weapons they will utilize next. Similarly, we do not know what China will do next in respect of Taiwan. We do not know what North Korea will do next. And then there's the world's economy. And then there's the world's ecosystem. Humanity is on a highway to climate hell. The UN Secretary General has warned the fight for a livable planet will be won or lost in this decade. But it isn't just the world out there, it is also my world. Something happens to me, something happens to someone I know. I know it doesn't rock the world, but it rocks my world. Illness unexpectedly attacks someone we love dearly, loses their job, or their marriage breaks down, or they make choices that we know won't end well. The bottom drops out of our world because we lose someone who we love. How do we handle it when the thing we most fear happens? How do we handle it when the thing we most fear is happening? That is why we're looking at Psalm 46 this morning. You can see my headings. When our world crumbles, our God is an ever-present help. Our God is working his purposes out. Therefore, we will not fear. When our world crumbles, verse 1, God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. Therefore, we will not fear, though the earth give way and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam and the mountains quake with their surging. The first thing to notice is that the Bible is realistic about the fact that bad things happen. Floods, earthquake, destruction, the feeling that it's all falling apart, the world feeling like it's falling apart. We can take this literally, but it is also an image. Life becomes a raging ocean. There is uproar. That was certainly the case for the people of God at the time the psalm was written. A succession of ungodly kings who had led their nation astray and incurred God's wrath against them. The real threat for them of attack and war from other nations, the prospect of exile and slavery. And yes, earthquakes and tsunamis and floodwater. I wonder whether deep down we continue to have an expectation that we ought and will live in a world where everything goes smoothly. And as a result, we are often taken by surprise when things don't work out as we imagine they should. But the real world post-Eden is not like that. The real world is imperfect. The real world, to use the Apostle Paul's language, is a decaying world. The things we count on as being secure periodically crumble before us. Our lives sometimes collapse war, famine, betrayal, unemployment, the death of a child. A real setback to the Christian work we're doing. The waters roar and foam and bring destruction. It is a perilous world, and we find ourselves worrying for ourselves, worrying for our children, worrying for our parents, and indeed worrying for our world itself. And yet the people of God are able to say, when our world crumbles, when our world gives way, verse 1, God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth give way. When our world crumbles, secondly, our God is an ever-present help. The message of the Bible from cover to cover, the experience of his people for the last 4,000 years is that our God is not absent, he is not remote, he is not unavailable, he is not at a distance, he is not somewhere else. God is always consistently, reliably on the spot. Verse 4, there is a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy place where the Most High dwells. God is within her. She will not fall. God will help her at the break of day. Nations are in uproar. Kingdoms fall. He lifts his voice. The earth melts. The Lord Almighty is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. Throughout the Bible there is this image of the city of God, God ruling over his chosen people, God protecting his people, God providing for his people. We remember Genesis 1, the perfect world that God created, and in the middle of Eden was a river with streams coming from it to water the garden. And Bible authors have picked up on this, and streams of water have become imagery for God supplying the needs of his people, supplying the needs of the city of God. Verse 4, God dwells in, picture language, the city he has created for his people. God is with us. Verse 5, God is within her. And who is this God? Verse 4, he is the Most High. Verse 7, he is the Lord Almighty. But crucially, he is the God of Jacob. What does that mean? Why is that important? Well, you recall that in Old Testament history, God chose a people for himself. Why did he choose them? Why did he love them? Was it because they were the most numerous people around? Was it because they were the most moral people around? No, the Bible simply tells us that God chose them because he did. And he made a promise, a covenant with Abraham, and he said, I will be your God, and I will be the God of your descendants, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. Yes, this is the perfect and holy God. This is the powerful creator himself, but it is also the God who chooses to love and become involved with individuals like you and me who have broken and fragmented lives. This psalm is not saying that God is present with people. It's telling us something far more comforting than that. God is present with his people. The Bible language, as always, is so personal. Look at verse 1. God is our refuge and strength. Verse 7, repeated in verse 11. The Lord Almighty is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. But here's the point. What is the purpose of God being present with his people? The psalm spells it out. He is an ever-present help. He has taken upon himself the role of protector and refuge. When our world crumbles, our God is an ever-present help. People in desperate need require a refuge. You drive down a motorway, you break down, there are refuge laybys, they're called that now. And more heartbreakingly, the huge number of refugees who are fleeing from war or persecution or famine. And for us, when our world is falling apart, who promises to be our refuge when everything else is insecure? Who promises to be our security? Our God is an ever-present help. Therefore, verse 2, we will not fear. Therefore, verse 5, we are impregnable. Because God lives in and controls and protects our city. I read this sentence somewhere. It may be a dark night. We may be under siege, but the light of the morning will come. When our world crumbles, our God is an ever-present help. But there's always the why question, isn't there? Why is this happening to me, to us, to our world? Why is this powerful God allowing it, even ordaining it? And why me? Well, isn't this psalm reassuring us, my third heading, that when our world crumbles, our God is an ever-present help. Our God is working his purposes out. Verse 8, come behold the works of the Lord, we're told. Come and behold, remember what he has done, remember what he is doing. For the people of God at that time, it would have meant them remembering the Exodus. You remember his people, slaves in Egypt. Those 10 terrible plagues, those desolations that he brought so that his people could be freed from the rule of Pharaoh. For them it would have meant remembering how God had sustained his people through the wilderness for 40 years and led them into the promised land. Remembering how God had conquered the promised land for them, how he had banished their enemies. Remembering that God in his goodness had given judges to rule over them in a godly way. Remembering that despite the unfaithfulness of the many kings they had had, that God continued to protect them from their enemies. No doubt each of us can recall things in our lives that God has done. And for many of us, the most amazing thing he has done is to send his son Jesus to die for me, to rescue me, to lead me. And he has called me to know him and love him and follow him, despite my unfaithfulness and indifference towards him. God is working his purposes out. And I very much hope that you can see that God working his purposes out even in your life. How he has worked in your life, how he is working in your life. And if you can't quite see that, please do come and see me, come and see Deb. But what is God's ultimate purpose? Well, we get a glimpse of it in these verses. We also got a glimpse of it in those verses from Isaiah. Verse 9, he makes wars cease to the ends of the earth. He breaks the bow and shatters the spear. He burns the shields with fire. He says, be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. God's ultimate purpose is not peace on this earth. It is peace on a renewed earth. That future day when God promises there will be a new heaven and a new earth where God himself is the focus, where he is universally exalted and where there is no animosity, no injustice, no sin, no tears, no mountains falling into the sea. That is God's purpose. And Christian, God's purpose for you is that you be part of that new creation. God's purpose for you in this life is that you are a means by which many others are also part of that new creation. When our world crumbles, our God is an ever-present help. Our God is working his purposes out. Therefore, we will not fear. Verse 10, be still and know that I am God. Be still. What is the tone of God's voice when he says that? Is he saying, hush, hush, there, be still? No, this is much more of an imperative, a command. He's saying, stop. Cease what you're doing. Be still. Cease. Stop. What is it that we're doing that we shouldn't be doing? In the midst of the trauma that we are going through, whatever it is, God says, stop. What is he telling us to stop doing? Well, the answer is in verse 2. God is our refuge and strength, verse 1, an ever-present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth give way and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea. Therefore we will not fear. Stop being fearful, says God. Be still, cease, stop that. And know that I am God. Knowing has two aspects, doesn't it? For sure, it means knowing about God. It's about remembering who he is, the Lord Almighty, the Most High. It's about remembering what he has done, what he is doing, remembering that he's continuing to work his purposes out. But know that I am God is far more than that. It's about committing myself to him, seeking his refuge, regarding him as my fortress, my refuge, reminding myself that he will be exalted among the nations. He will be exalted on the earth because he is God. The things that are causing me to despair, to weep, the things that cause that sick feeling in the pit of my stomach, the things that keep me awake. When our world crumbles, our God is an ever-present help. Our God is working his purposes out. Therefore, we will not fear.